Hello and welcome back to SML Total Access. I'm Primetime 000, and with me, as always, is my trusted co-hosts Matt and Dan. What's going on, fellas?
Let's go, let's go, let's go. Glad to be
How's it
back on
going?
TA, baby.
Let's go. Hey, let's start this off. First down, and it's been a while since we've came out with an episode, so hey, you know what's happened? One of our very own has won his first Super Bowl. Matt is a champion. Congrats to Matt, and that's our first down topic. Matt, um, what a run you had, and I guess what does this mean overall? I know Matt had a bit of a attitude where he wasn't very good, and it was kind of grating at some people. What does this change? What does this mean? And I guess Matt, we'll start with you.
Yeah, well, thanks for the props. It's something I didn't see happening. I'm truly honest. I never saw me doing that, especially with the run I had. But what does it mean? I mean, honestly, I think it just means I did what I had to do. Having the Chargers season one, this team starts to fall off immediately. They are super good to start, and then as soon as that offseason hit, I lost Keenan Allen, and I knew I was losing Eckler. This team just falls apart. I've got to make even more changes possibly this offseason. You know, I've thrown Khalil Mack out there. I'd love to keep him, but I don't know what's going to happen. So I did what I had to do. I had a really good team. Obviously, I had one of the better quarterbacks, and this was really my season. I think the hard part for me is not just losing those good guys, but I lost guys like Bryce Callahan. He's like an 83 overall, and he was my slot corner. Jerry Tillery, who filled the defensive tackle spot for me, that I had to trade Eckler to fix. So, you know, I don't know if I can get back there because unless I really do a good job of team building, which it's not my strength. But yeah, it certainly feels good.
Jeez, why'd we let him go first on that question? Man, what a boring answer to that. We don't want to hear about all your problems, Matthew. We want to hear about your dominance and how you just ran through the SML season one. You're the champ. You beat Bomber, you beat Prime, you beat Q. You are the top dog. No more this little, tail between your legs, Eeyore kind of attitude. You're the man. You're the champ. Live in the moment. Let's go, boy.
I'm 3-3, Dan, just to remind you.
Um, so I get what I think about it is a few things. Obviously, is Matt is good, and I know there's a point that yeah he won with the Chargers, and they probably were by far the best team this cycle or this season or season one. And we've seen it with Bomber kind of last cycle when he won with the Browns very early. And it's so tough to win in this league, especially as teams improve. But just to be able to pull it off in general was impressive. I do think that from a grand picture, though, it means something more than just Matt and more than just the Chargers. I'm gonna take a stretch here and say this is a win for the guys who do it the right way, for the guys who don't watch YouTube, for the guys who don't do ebooks, for guys who build their playbook, just play their games. They're not in five leagues. They're not looking to cheese people. They just play their game. They do it the right way. They punt on fourth down. They're not trying to break the rules. This is a win to prove that you can win competitive football against some of the league's best players without being cheesy. And I think that proves that, hey, there is light in the SML, and the good guys do find a way to pull it out. So that's what I think it means.
It also means right now there's two of the three members of TA are holding reigning bowl championships in the SML. So just also wanted to point that out as well too.
Yeah, wow. Thanks for that, Dan.
Yep,
Uh,
primer baby, primer. Let's go.
yep. Primer Bowl champion. Let's move on now to second down. What's one thing that's not true that you thought may be true at the start of the cycle? And Dan, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, that's I think a really good question because what we think right out of the shoot of the game, a lot of times ends up not being true. We thought freeform was going to be a dominating thing. Now we're finding out, yeah, it's maybe not so good, but now it's maybe making a swing back where, yeah, maybe it is good. And we're finding out different things like that, like speed. Hey, speed wasn't really good. Now, yeah, all of a sudden, now speed might be a factor. But I think the biggest thing for me right now is I'm figuring out cover three is a really lousy defense. Not only was it lousy to start in the seams, but it's pretty lousy now as far as deep balls. Seeing a lot of outside thirds getting beat on the cover three. And so This game changes every update. Something changes. Things are different. You always got to kind of stay ahead of the curve. But if you're a cover 3 guy, be very careful right now because it's pretty weak in the seams and it's definitely weak on the outside thirds deep balls.
Yeah, I think for me, I've got two for me. I think the easy one is freeform. I kind of thought that people that put in the time, those guys that go into practice mode and are in multiple leagues and really practice freeform, that they would really take that next step and just be better than everyone else because they could do things that everyone else couldn't. What we've really seen is that freeform really hasn't become all that big of a deal. I mean, there are certain instances where it becomes really, really useful, but for the most part, you don't even see a lot of the really good guys use it that much. I'm thinking like you guys and Faz and stuff like that. You guys will use it situationally, but I kind of thought when it came out, it might be used every single time. And the only person that really uses it a lot is Bean, and I think it's a blessing and a curse for him. I think a lot of his issues are when I blew him out like 35-0 or something week 1. He's 4-1 now, but I think freeform, he threw a lot of interceptions because they were just bad passes that he might have completed if he didn't use it. So, and he's got like 700 hours, so it makes sense on why he's used it so much. And then I think for me, I thought playing the game before it came out, I thought that the edge rushers were going to be the big deal. And I actually think that it's the inside that really matters. I think it's the defensive tackles. They're not going to really shine on the sack numbers, but I think when you look at stuffing the run, guys like Kenny Clark, obviously he has inside stuff, but DeForest Buckner, I don't think he has inside stuff. Correct me if I'm wrong, Prime, but
Correct.
he's a beast regardless. And it's not the sacks, it's the pressures. When I play Prime, my first pass against you when we played this season was way off the mark, went right to your safety, had a guy wide open. With Justin Herbert, the little replay Madden showed, Buckner was right in his face. He's not getting the sacks, but they have that quicker path to the quarterback, and I think the defensive tackles are more important than the edge rushers.
Yeah, no, those are good. I have two, and the first is I thought that Bean was actually going to be good this year, great maybe, and I was just way off. I was just way off. Um, and I started to think I might have been wrong when we had the Duck Kings Bowl and he played Doink, and he looked pretty bad in that game. And I'm like, well, maybe it's just a bowl game and he just wants to show out. But after that, he still hasn't really he hasn't lit it up with the Bengals team with Joe Burrow in a really weak division. I just expected more out of Bean. But gameplay wise, I thought that the deep passes were going to be kind of extinct almost. And they've kind of patched the game to where pressure has been dialed back a little bit. It's still there. You can still get sacked. Pressure still comes, but they've kind of tuned it to where the blitzes aren't quite as effective, and the pressure just in general on 4-man rushes doesn't get there quite as fast, which makes the deep crosses, deep corners, deep streaks able to be hit. Whereas when the game first came out, I thought that might grow extinct, but they're still there. They're still there. So moving on now, which SML member has regressed the most this cycle? And Matt, we'll start with you.
Two. One's probably easy and probably on both of your minds, maybe. And then the other one I'm going to shock you with. So I'm going to start with the obvious one. I think it's Doink. He was in. I'm not even going to say arguably. He probably was in the toughest division, that NFC South, with Faz and Dan being so elite last cycle. But he consistently made the playoffs, and he gave them both runs for their money. Whether in the playoffs or during the regular season, got some wins from him, I believe, and was a really good player. Now he's got the Washington football team, which a lot of people were talking about going top 5 because they kind of fit the mold. I talk about defensive tackles. Geez, they had probably the two best ones in the game. And he's in, I'm going to say a weenie hut division. I mean, Woods is usually an 8-8 player. Graham's has got too much money to care about Madden, and Tiny's tiny, and he just isn't doing anything. And I think it comes down to probably Sam Howell, but he's regressed a lot. I thought he would overcome all of that. I know he puts in the time. He's in multiple leagues. So I'm going to go with Doink. And my shocker, I say I use regression lightly here, not what you're thinking. I'm going to go with Bomber. Yeah, he's winning games, but Bomber just doesn't strike that fear in you that he used to. His offense is absolutely just in rough shape. I mean, I shut him out 9-0. I played terrible, couldn't move the ball, but I felt like if I just didn't turn it over, I had him beaten that playoff game. His offense just didn't scare me. He's 24th in the league in passing yards, and that's not a bad offense. He is second in rushing. That is his saving grace. Brees Hall is an absolute freak. He never goes down on the first tackle, but Bombers lost games to Fig. He lost to Grams, I believe. He just doesn't have that fear anymore, and I think that's the regression that he's had, especially offensively.
Those are good. Those are good. A little shock with Bomber. I think maybe that might be a little team. I think going from the Browns where they were and to the Jets, he'll get there. I'm not too worried about that. I'm going to go but back to a Bombers team last year and looking at Noel with the Browns. Now Noel never was a guy that kind of tore it up, but I always thought he was a good player. 500, made the playoffs a few times, had some runs with some good teams. He's got a good team, almost even better to start. Could I say that? You know, Train isn't quite as good as it was last year, but it's still there. He's still got Garrett, still got Schwartz. He's got a nice young defense. He's got Watson, who's rated well. And just for him sitting there at whatever he's 2-4, 2-5, just isn't good. That's not where he should be. He should be 500. He should be second best team in that division and pushing for a 7th seed. So I'm going to go Noel and with the Browns.
Yeah, no, those are good. I tend to. It's tough because Noel, he wasn't a great player, or I don't even know if he was a good player last cycle. So I was thinking more for the guys who were good or really good and kind of dropped off a little bit more. So I think Bomber's a good choice. I think that Faz is a good choice because and I think I'm going to go with him. And I know I was trying to sell a big rivalry last season, and I'm not trying to push that as much this year. I just think that looking at it in terms of his pass game, in terms of his confidence, in terms of what happens like when something goes wrong in games, is how he's reacting. I think that he's in a funk right now, and he's not feeling very good about Madden or himself. And I think a few of the losses to me probably didn't help him with that. But he's also lost to some guys who aren't very great and guys who he would uncharacteristically lose to. So I'm going to have to go with Faz. And I'm going to, I think he can get a turnaround. I hope for the sake of the Colts Jaguars rivalry, but he certainly does not have that aura about him this cycle that he has, in previous cycles.
I think it's going to be interesting to see what he does with Trevor, if he keeps him or not. You think he'll keep him?
Yeah, I think he's going to go to X Factor, so I think he'll end up keeping him.
He is X Factor, and he doesn't.
Oh, he is.
Excuse me.
Yeah, the problem is he doesn't have Gunslinger or whatever. What's that? Pass lead elite or whatever it's called. So
right,
I think it might be wise for him to shop Trevor because Faz, even the last few cycles, with and without Gunslinger, is two different passers, and I think he might need to roll the dice.
Yeah, I forgot he starts Superstar, even though he's not Superstar in any other facet of the game for whatever reason. So, but for me, I think he holds on to Trevor because that's his guy, whether that's the right move or not. But if you watch Faz's streams, which I do a lot, he tends to play during times that I'm either doing nothing or working and doing nothing, and so he's just on the EA. Anything that goes wrong in the game, it's EA, or it's the player. He needs to look in the mirror a little bit. He's a fantastic player. Put some of that onus on yourself. Fix those things, and he can certainly be elite.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm certainly not writing him off. Let's move on. 4th down. Which SML member this season now, comparing this season to last season, who's improved the most? And Dan, we'll start with you.
Yeah, this is good to highlight some of these guys that are starting out fast and hoping they're going to stay that way. I'm going to stick in my own division because I've played him twice. And yet he's sitting there at 4-2, and KJ. KJ is playing well. The first time we played him, it took everything I had, took a last-second field goal to win it. Second time, it just got away from him, a lot of turnovers. But he's playing some good defense, and that's what I'm most impressed with right now. He's got a Rams team that can play good defense. He's got players. He's using them well, and if he just doesn't make turnovers, he shopped his number one running back away, and I don't hate the move because I think he got good value back for it. But he's got to be able to run the ball, make good decisions, and KJ's sitting at 4-2 right now after having the number one pick last year. He had to give over to Paulie. Is doing good, and watch out for KJ this season.
Matt, what do you
Yeah,
think?
I think you've got two. I think you've got two options here. You've got DW and you've got KJ. And if you take a look at DW, just to give him some props in case you go KJ as well. Um, he's 5-1, but I'm looking for that marquee kind of win. He did beat Dom, but he's beat Fins, Mike, Fig, and Two Step. So I need to see a little bit more from him. He's got QB next week. That'll be big. So I got to ride the KJ train. I mean, we're talking about the guy that had the number one pick and now is 4-2, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah, 4-2. That's really impressive. And I watched that game against Dan. It's a week one thing. Anything can happen. But when you're talking about KJ versus Dan, you don't really think that doesn't really matter what week it is. But 17-16 loss. Dan last second field goal, if I recall correctly. He was 9 of 15 with Stafford, 132, no touchdowns. So he did blow the doors off, but only threw one pick. And if you could eliminate the picks, especially against those really good guys, and just keep the game close, anything can happen. He did get blown out by Dan week 4, but he threw 4 picks. So limit those turnovers. And, KJ has always played pretty good defense, always had a decent user. And this team, it's got the two unicorns in Donald and Ramsey. If he can just not put them in bad positions, a punt is as good as anything sometimes. I think I like what I see out of KJ. The Monty win is really big.
Yeah, no, KJ has certainly improved. But I'm going to have to go with DW, especially to start last cycle, or last season, I should say. He wasn't beating the guys that he could have or should have beaten. And now he's doing that. And he's 5-1, and he's actually, he's tied for the best record in the AFC and the SML. I know that he might not have a marquee win, and that sucks a little bit for him. But comparing where he was last season to where he is now, I'm very proud of him. And, I hate to take the blame, or I hate to take the credit for it, but I am, because SML The Breakdown did come out. And ever since then, he's really changed his play a little bit. So, SML The Breakdown plug. The next episode is releasing on KJ Slander. I've got the tape. I'm editing it as we speak. So, congrats to DW on being my most improved guy.
Yeah, no one was more lost watching them play last year than DW. I mean, just completely just not understanding how the game plays with a dominating team in the Bills. So, I think the turnaround from last season, this season for DW is most impressive. So take all the credit you get, Ken Prime. Good job there.
Thank you.
Breaking news on the breakdown there. I like that. Even if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, well, the breakdown's on KJ, it's not on me, and that's not going to help. Watch it. You might find some things that you do that KJ does that you also do, and some of the tips might help.
Yeah, thanks for that. Guys, let's move on to the extra point, and I believe we're going to have a Mat 5. I don't know what the Mat 5 is going to be on, if it's what it is, but here he is, our Super Bowl champion, so you know what's credible, giving us the Mat 5.
Yeah, my first Mat 5 as a Simbardi winner. I did go with a little bit of short notice here. I did stick with just my top 5 teams. I feel like, we haven't had one of these this season, so it's kind of, we're, week 7. It's time to start talking about these teams as we get closer to that later in the season and that playoff push. At number 5, I've got Bomber. I know I just talked about his regression, but again, I feel like he regressed from an elite, scary player to a really good player, but if you play him in the playoffs, you're not as scared as you would have been before.
Yeah.
He's beat everybody on his schedule. He's got, I think this key win is over QB, but then the big loss to Grams. At number 4, I've got Faz. Here's the problem. When Faz is good, he's really good. When he's bad, unless he plays prime, he's not really bad. And his losses, he lost to Bean by 3, and he lost to Clink by 2. Those are not bad losses. I know both of those guys, I believe, Clink obviously is like his best friend, so they know each other well. I think him and Bean have played in other leagues before, so they know each other well. And Bean's got a good offense and a good team. And so at number 3, I've got Bean. Really, that game was the tiebreaker between the two of them. I blew the brakes off of Bean. I think it was like 35-0 week 1, but he's done nothing but win since. With wins over Meats, over Knoll. Division games are tough, especially against a team like the Browns. He's got wins over Faz, like I mentioned, and then NYT and Colt. He's got Dan next. That's going to be a fun one. We'll see how he goes going forward. But Bean's looking pretty sharp at 5-1. At number 2, I've got QP. He lost to Prime in a really big shootout. I think that game looked worse for QP than the final score. He was down quite a bit and had some pretty miraculous deep balls. But that big win over Dan, 51 points. It's still only one win, but sometimes when it comes to the map 5, it's all about style points, and that separates him from the pack. And then number 1, I've got U Prime. I think that win against RD, who I don't care what his record says. I think he's got 2 force losses, so he only has 1 win. But I mean, the force losses, he beats Field, and him against Faz could go either way. But you got the loss to Monty, but and I know he was flapping his gums and he hasn't done anything since. He lost to KJ and he's fallen off the rails. That was a Super Bowl. Meanwhile, you just shook it off as one game. That it was just a bad game, and you've come back and beat Clink, and you just beat RD in a really close game. So I've got you number 1.
Thanks. No, I agree 100% with that list, Matt. Why didn't you include yourself?
Well, I'm 3-3, so it's pretty tough to include myself on that list. Dan was number 6. Dan was right on the outside. I was trying to make a case, honestly, between Dan and Bomber. But I did just lean Bomber with that. He has the key win over QB and 1 less loss.
Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, Matt, come on. You got to put yourself in there. You're a defending champion. I don't care what records say. One of these times I'm going to get you to say actually something positive about yourself. Come on, Matt.
Hey, if I can keep winning, we'll see. But I've lost to QB, Pauly, and Prime, all 1-score games. I'm not, the ship isn't sinking. It's just these are games I was winning last year, so I just got to figure things out. And I'm paying Herbert a lot of money, so we've gone a little pass heavy, which I actually don't think has hurt me too bad. So see how it plays out.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's a good list, Matt. And that is the Matt 5, and that is SML Total Access. I'm Prime Time. That was Matt and Dan. Guys, we appreciate you listening. Let us know in SML social chat on Discord kind of what you think about the list and who you guys think should be top 5 and maybe some of your predictions for the rest of the season. Guys, we appreciate you listening. And until next time, have a great week.